questions that we've gotten is just the decision process of rolling out these changes, right? We see the video online. Kind of walk us through the process. Did county leaders know about this? What was the process like of rolling this thing out?
So the process really started about 12 months ago. We started thinking about calls for service, where we are applying the appropriate resource to those calls. And so we started having those conversations. And then we had a group of individuals within the organization that formed and started looking at certain calls for service. These are individual patrol officers that are going to these calls and recognizing that it's not the proper resource. And so they sat down and came up with a proposal. We went through it, myself and some of my command staff, we looked at it. We thought it was an appropriate response. And after that process, I talked to my boss, county manager, about it. And we all agreed that it was the appropriate methodology to move forward in our process. And so that was the rollout. The messaging, we wanted to make sure the community was aware, and we acknowledged that the messaging could have been done a lot better. And so that was the issue, is that we feel like there was not a lot of clarity in terms of what was put out, because there's a lot of misinformation out there right now in terms of what we are not going to do, so to speak. And I want to make sure that people are aware that we are going to be responding to any unlawful action in Henrico County. So if people feel like they can come in Henrico County and do what they want to do, that is not the case. It's never going to be the case. Our men and women go out there each and every day and they work hard to make this county safe, and it's going to remain safe.
Have y'all heard of any, I guess, local jurisdictions, maybe in Central Virginia as a whole, that are doing similar things?
When you look at it, yes. I mean, that's best practices across the country. You don't want to have a police response on something that's not a response. For instance, we have people that call us, my 9-year-old won't go to school today. That's not something that you want the police to be there for. We don't want to be the authoritarian figure that shows up and tries to scare your kid to go to school. That's not what we're there for. And so we want to make sure that our residents and people understand that. We're always going to, like I said, we're always going to address violent crime, unlawful activity, particularly, I know the issue came up about shoplifting. And shoplifting, we're always going to respond to shoplifting. People are calling about we're not responding because, that's the message that people are getting. But if there's activities taking place, you have a shoplifting in progress, of course we're going to respond. Video, of course we're going to respond. The message we want to get out is people got to realize that there are businesses out there that sometimes they don't want to prosecute anyone. They just want to report because it may be their policy, it may be for insurance purposes, and all they want is just a report. But we can take that report over the phone and you're still going to get the same report that you would have gotten if an officer was there right in front of you. So it's no different. And we've been taking reports over the phone for over 40 years here in Henrico County. So it's not something that's new to what we're doing, but we're going to respond to shoplifting. Men and women in this organization, they address shoplifting every single day. There's always somebody sending an email out with a video of somebody that's shoplifting, and they're asking, does anybody know this person? So we're actually arresting individuals by video for shoplifting, and we're prosecuting those. And that's always going to be the case here in Henrico.
Could you talk about the community policing unit? I think that was the first time we heard about it.
Well, we have a community policing unit. It has 16 individuals in that unit, and they're spread out throughout the county. And they're responsible for certain areas in the county, and they mainly deal with a lot of nuisance issues that go on in the county. If you talk to many residents that have a community policing officer, they know that officer by name. Their job is to make sure they make those community connections. And that's one of the resources that we were trying to shift to handle abandoned vehicles, bicycles, because they are out in those communities. Patrol is really trying to be more visible. And so what we want to make sure the public is aware of, by us reallocating those resources, now we're putting that patrol officer back in your community. That patrol officer is more visible. That patrol officer can handle the speeding calls and complaints that we get about traffic issues, because now we're allocating a different resource that's still going to handle that situation. It's just not the patrol officer. And so we're never going to neglect our community. We're always going to make sure that they have the proper resources for the particular call.
There was a situation that a lot of people brought up on social media about loud noise calls, giving examples of maybe loud parties where something actually ends up happening, a shooting ends up happening. and people are wondering now, okay, are the police not going to show up? What's your response to that?
So recognize now, a loud party call will fall under our noise ordinance. That's much different than a kid running through the hallway at an apartment complex. Those are two different things. And so we're going to respond to crime. A loud party that violates the noise ordinance is a crime. We're going to be there. So I want to make sure people really get a clear understanding of when we're going to respond. And that's going to be a response that you're always going to have from the Henrico Police. Loud parties, anything that violates our noise ordinance, you will get a police response.
It seems like the changes may put maybe a little bit more of a burden on dispatchers to really kind of, I don't want to say sus, but really go through a call with someone. Do you think that might put a burden on dispatchers at all?
It will not. So to make sure people understand this, we didn't roll this off on our own. We had to collaborate with our dispatchers. And so we met with them, talked about it as well to make sure they were good with the changes that were being made as well. And so they are well aware of what we're trying to do. They have no issue with that. I think it makes everybody a lot safer. And I think it makes our county a lot safer because now we're putting the proper resource to that call. And when we start spreading our officers around throughout the county and making them more visible, that only deters crime and it's only going to make our county much safer.
That kind of answers one of my last questions for you. I talked with a professor yesterday and he said, really the only downside to this is there not being that kind of face-to-face interaction that a lot of people might get when they do call for these minor things. Do you anticipate that being an issue? And if so, how do you combat that?
I don't see that as an issue because as I mentioned to you, right now we take reports over the phone now. We have a telephone reporting unit that has been taking calls over the phone for the past 40 years. Now as mentioned yesterday, we respond to 139,000 calls. So we're talking about possibly reducing calls to maybe by 5,000, which is in the big scheme of things is not a lot of calls. And so we're always going to continue to be interacting with our community. And I always tell my staff, you don't want to just interact with community when they call us. You want to interact with community when they don't need us. And so you want to start building those relationships before crime even occurs. And so that's always going to be our case. We always want to engage with our community. You always want to build those partnerships. And so I don't see that as a big obstacle just because now we're taking that report over the phone. You are still engaging with somebody in Henrico County. It just may not be face to face, but you're having a conversation with someone.
And last question, the same professor said that Henrico County is kind of a leader in this and is kind of taking the step forward following some national trends of seeing this, across the country. What's your response to that, just become a leader?
Well, I mean, it just shows where policing is. And I think from a leadership standpoint, these are things that we've been looking at across the country as well, and just how we can better reallocate resources. And again, making sure you have that proper resource for that proper call. And we don't want to engage people that are doing lawful things. We should never be engaging people that are doing lawful things because it's only going to lead to confrontation. And that's one of the things we're trying to avoid. That makes us better, that makes our community much safer, and I think overall it's going to help keep crime down in Henrico County.
Anything else you want to add that we didn't already ask you?
No, I would just say, as I mentioned, I've been a Henrico County resident for over 30 years. I have never felt unsafe in Henrico County. And I can tell you to this day, the men and women here work extremely hard. I don't think our residents have anything to worry about as far as being safe, about us not addressing crime. We're always going to address crime, and that's always something we strive for each and every year is try to reduce crime. And that's going to be the main goal for Henrico County. So for those that feel like we're being lenient to individuals, nah, that's not the case at all. If you come to Henrico County, you commit unlawful acts, you will pay the price. And that's the way we're going to operate.
Yeah, it seems like this is like trying to really hone in on these more frivolous calls, like, hey, my kid's not going to school, a police officer
Correct.
doesn't need to show up to that.
You're exactly right. And, and people really don't give a true understanding of the type of calls we get that are like that, wherein they're trying to impart the police department on those type of calls. And again, that's a parent's responsibility. We don't want to be that force because again, officers even get upset when you say, I'm gonna put the police on you, I'm getting the police. That is not what we're there for. We're here to build relationships, not only with adults, we're here to build relationships with our kids as well. We're not here to scare your kid. We want to make sure they grow up and be productive citizens, and that's not the way to do it by calling us to make sure we're the force that pushes them to do something that you are not able to do. So those are things that we looked at, and that's one of the calls that we really felt like does not need for us to respond, but it also we want to make sure we put that onus back on parents.
And just to reiterate the fact that this will free up you all to actually respond to things that are serious?
Either respond to things that are serious or be in those neighborhoods where it can deter crime. Visibility deters crime. And so the more officers you have in a community, the less likely there are something to happen. And so it does free those individuals up. When you talk about going to a call such as that, the officer may spend 20, 30 minutes just talking to your kid when they could have been 20, 30 minutes addressing that traffic incident or that speeding complaint that's been coming in or that drug complaint that's been coming in. Those are the things we're trying to get our public to understand. That's going to make us much safer than us responding to those type of calls.